Welcome back to Internal Affairs with Dr. Roy Taylor. I'm your host, Dr. Roy Taylor. I am a police procedure expert, chief of police, and a consultant on cases across the country where law enforcement conduct is called into question. Today's episode is titled A Punch Too Far, the case of Miss Arminta. This case out of Arizona raises serious questions about the use of force that an officer decides to make and whether police action is aligned with professional standards. I was retained as the plaintiff's expert witness in this case. Comments go right to the heart of modern day policing. On September 18th, 2024, Officer Ross was driving through a Quick Trip parking lot. He wasn't on a call, he was just doing routine patrol. During that patrol, he noticed that there was a Hispanic male with facial tattoos standing in front of a silver Chrysler 200. Based solely on that, he decided this man must be in a gang and wanted to know more about him. He ran the registration plate of the vehicle that he was standing in front of, and it came back to Miss Arminta. The record indicated that Miss Arminta's driving license had been revoked for failure to pay a traffic citation. Instead of waiting for her to come out of the store and having a consensual conversation to inform her that her license was revoked, the officer hid in the parking lot, waited for her to get back in the car along with the Hispanic male, and enter onto a public roadway. At that point, the officer activated his emergency equipment and pulled her over. He approached the vehicle and said, "Are you Miss Arminta?" She responded, "Yes, I am." He immediately said, "Step out of the car," which she complied with. He said, "You are under arrest." And she asked why. He grabbed hold of her arm and she instinctively pulled back. Instead of telling her you're under arrest for a citation that you failed to respond to or any other information, once he felt that resistance, Officer Ross immediately delivered a closed-fisted punch to the temple of Miss Arminta, knocking her back toward the inside of the car. According to Officer Ross's report, she pulled away from him and tried to get back in the car, but fortunately, he was wearing a body-worn camera that tells a different story. At which point, Officer Ross grabbed her by her hair, not knowing that she was wearing a hairpiece, and ripped it off her head. He threw that on the ground, grabbed her hair, and pulled her to the ground and started dragging her across the hot Arizona pavement. At this point, the passenger gets out like any of us might do to see what's going on with his friend. The officer immediately drew his pistol, pointed it at him, told him to get back in the car, and left Miss Arminta laying in the roadway while he moved back to the front left corner of his patrol vehicle for cover. He immediately radioed for backup and said, "I have one in custody, one at gunpoint," which, as a police officer, you would respond very quickly to a call like this from a brother officer who says he's got one in custody and one at gunpoint. So now he's got multiple police cars from several agencies coming to back him up. Upon their arrival, both subjects are placed in handcuffs. Officer Ross went to place Miss Arminta in the patrol vehicle. He didn't make sure that her foot was all the way inside the floorboard of the vehicle and slammed the door on her foot. I don't think he did it intentionally, but again, he wasn't paying attention. He was overly excited about being in contact with this man with facial tattoos. Miss Arminta was charged with simple possession of marijuana, possession of drug paraphernalia, a marijuana pipe, and for driving on a suspended license. The Hispanic male was released at the scene. He had no warrants or other outstanding issues with the police. But this case highlights how a simple consensual conversation in a parking lot could have avoided all of this. If the officer would have waited for her to come out once she got in a vehicle, he could have pulled in behind her, pulled in beside her, and gotten out and said, "Ma'am, I understand your driver's license is revoked. You're not going to be able to drive out of here. Would you mind letting me know if your passenger has an active driver's license and maybe he can drive the car for you?" He could have accomplished his goal as to finding out who this person was without having to resort to physical violence. The police department that Officer Ross worked for, use of force policy says that it must be reasonable. The policy meets all of the national standards of Graham v. Connor. and has the same requirements that the Supreme Court laid out in that case. It's very disappointing that an officer would go to this extent, punching a woman in the face, punching her in the temple where it could cause brain injury, and then criminally charge her. I just feel like this could have been handled in so many different ways. We all know that hindsight's 2020, but in this case, the officer saw somebody that he suspected to be a gang member simply based on their appearance. He could have resolved the matter while he was still on private property, the Quick Trip parking lot. He allowed this situation to go out of hand too quickly. If he was really afraid of this gang member, and not being degrading by saying being afraid, I'm afraid a lot when I'm out on the street, but wait for backup. Make sure that you have the tactical advantage. Punching a woman in the head and drawing your gun at a person that has done nothing more than decorate their body with tattoos is certainly not appropriate. I hope that you enjoy these episodes. They're very quick. I like to get right to the point, explain my position. I hope that you'll subscribe to the channel and tune in for future episodes. This was episode 3. I'm going to plan on releasing a new episode each week. And I hope we start getting some comments and more subscribers so that we can hopefully one day turn this into an interactive type of platform. Again, thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you in future episodes.